I'm going to show this program because I spent £10 on this and I have never felt more robbed ever. I'm sorry, Hello Dollies was like 12 and was twice the size of this. I will be doing a video about programs and how the prices of them have gotten so extortionate, but that's not for today. Today is about Mean Girls. Oh, the Mean Girls musical. Look, I have been fairly open with my thoughts on the Mean Girls musical so far, and I'll take you back to when they first released the cast album. I was really excited. I've really loved Mean Girls. I came into Mean Girls a little bit later than a lot of other people, but I have such a fondness for that film. I think they struck such a great note with their comedy. It's very deadpan in places, but it's such an iconic movie. And I think such an iconic movie deserved an iconic musical. And listening to the original cast album from Broadway, I was not sold on it. I thought the structure was a little bit weird. I thought a lot of the lyrics weren't strong enough. I was very down on it. And then I watched bootlegs and I wasn't clicking with it. And then earlier this year, the film came out. And yes, sure, they trimmed down a lot of the material, which was a positive and got us to the nitty-gritty a little bit quicker, but still didn't really click and didn't click with general audiences, to be fair. But with all that said, I still had never actually sat down to watch the full thing live. And I feel like that is the prime place to watch a show. That's where you are meant to watch it. A bootleg and a cast album can't really replace that full experience. So I couldn't really say for certain my full thoughts on Mean Girls. I wanted to give it a fair chance, so I did. So, has my opinion changed on the Mean Girls musical? Now seeing it live in its new refined form, have I finally clicked with it? But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I am the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do video essays, brackets, and tier lists, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me, it helps out the channel. But let's dive into the Mean Girls musical. And yes, I'm not wearing pink. It's not Wednesday. I'm not wearing pink. It's not Wednesday. But I did hear, however, that green does go good with pink. I want to give the Mean Girls musical right now some credit, because legitimately the version that is currently in the West End is a lot stronger than the version that was on Broadway. They have done a lot of really good work to refine it and have made clear strides in improving this material. My initial opinion of the Mean Girls musical was that it feels like it was a show that felt like it needed one or two more workshops before going straight to Broadway. And now that they've had that time, it's certainly clear that I feel like I was correct in that. Now it feels tighter, it works a lot better, the flow is so much stronger. I think that Mean Girls is a very adequate adaptation. What I mean by that is that if you are going into this wanting the film on stage, that's what you get. It's very faithful, it does well to highlight a lot of the best moments from the film. Actually, something else that they do quite well is navigating what still works in 2024. It does feel like Mean Girls, for the most part. And if that's all you want, if you just want a really simple film-to-stage adaptation, you're gonna get what you're gonna get. It's perfectly fine. But for me, as someone who adores this film, I don't think just an okay adaptation is good enough. Because I think in adaptation, Mean Girls has lost something. I think the Mean Girls film has such an interesting deadpan delivery that doesn't always work that well on stage. And to that end, it kind of just ends up feeling like a highlight reel of some of the film's best moments, instead of feeling like an actual adaptation. A lot of the stuff in here is good, because the film is good. But actually, I think it's when it blends something more theatrical with the ideas of Mean Girls that I attach to it a little bit more. Theatre tends to be a lot more exaggerated. So it's in the moments where we go a little bit more absurd that I actually found myself enjoying Mean Girls more. The way they do the bus hit is absolutely hilarious. Comes out of nowhere, is brilliantly timed. It's ridiculous, but it kind of works because of that. Some of the iconic lines feel really kind of forced into there, But one of my favourite ones is the way that they end Meet the Plastics. But Gretchen having a little moment and being like, come by tomorrow, it'll be fetch. It's campy. But the moments where it pushes more into that campiness, I feel like is where it clicks more. It's a bit like Heathers. The Heathers film is incredibly dark. It's dry. It's not really overly laugh out loud, but the musical exaggerates a lot of that. And because of that, I feel like it manages to land itself more into a cult side of things. Mean Girls is similarly dry, but I feel like a lot of the material struggles to translate all of the time. I enjoyed it, and I feel like they do a good job at expanding the story a little bit. Still hitting all the same beats that you know, but giving more moments to Katie, making her feel a little bit more fleshed out. Framing it with Damien and Janice as narrators. That did work for the most part. There's good ideas here, and Tina Fey's script does manage to carry you through the Mean Girls story, but at the end of the day, I was surprised at how little I laughed throughout the Mean Girls musical. For a comic icon like Tina Fey, I think I was expecting a little bit more. I feel like a lot of it is just her style naturally being more suited to screen than it is on stage. And obviously, comedy is one of the most subjective things, so I can tell that a lot of other people will clearly disagree, and that's perfectly fine and valid. But I felt as though it didn't really land as much comedy as the film did. So for the most part, I think it's enjoyable. I think the story of Mean Girls is enjoyable, and out of everything in the show, I feel like it is the strongest aspect. I do think it probably would have been beneficial to have a co-writer with Tina Fey, someone who has a little bit more experience for the stage, to blend Tina Fey's genius with someone who's more used to this format. Again, as I said, they've made great strides to the pacing of this. Act 1 is a lot stronger than Act 2, I would say, but I think a lot of that is down to the way that they have chopped and refined it. But some of that also comes from the music of the show. Now, the music of the show since the Broadway version has been my biggest gripe, because I just didn't really find myself attaching to the score. It's very poppy, it's very modern, but when listening to it, there were moments of glory that I don't think the entire score lived up to. They have since addressed lyrics, they've changed a lot, and I'm glad to report that I feel a lot better with this score watching it in person. As I said, there are moments of brilliance in here. Where Do You Belong, I feel like is a song I never really understood until I watched it. Part of that is just down to the fact that Damien is such a joy and a treat in this show. Played amazingly by cover Freddie Clements when I saw it. But it's big and flashy and campy. I think it's the closest this musical actually gets to musical theatre. I honestly wish this musical had more bigger, flashier group numbers. Apex Predator is a really well-crafted song. I feel like it doesn't quite live up to it as much in the staging, which I'll speak about a little bit later, but the contrasting of Katie's time in Africa to her time now is a really fun link between, and a great way to take an idea from the film and make it bigger and more theatrical. Someone Gets Hurt is exactly the type of song I feel like Regina George needs. It's brutal, it's cutthroat, it tells you exactly who she is and what she's willing to do. She's a bitch and she knows it. Revenge Party is a song that when I listened to it originally, I did not like. Now it being the finale of Act 1 works so much better. It gets us to the end of Act 1 a little bit quicker. We know the beats, we know what happens here. And Revenge Party is a stronger song than the other versions, than Fearless that came before it. Ending Act 1 with this big flashy explosion of a number really does work well. And I'm so glad they've retooled this into the Act 1 finale. I think the crowning jewel of this musical score is I'd Rather Be Me. Now, I'm glad that Mean Girls took a while to come to the West End, because I feel like if I had seen a show 2 years ago, I would have ranked I'd Rather Be Me a little bit lower. This is just personally because this song became really, really overplayed. Now that that hype has kind of dulled down a little bit more, it's nice to go into this show and finally be able to really appreciate I'd Rather Be Me for the joy that it is. I mean, there was a reason it became overplayed, because it's this show's strongest element. It does a great job at blending that poppy feel of this musical with a more musical theatre 11 o'clock number. And coming at the middle of Act 2, where you normally have a slump, is a great placement for it as well. It's a real anthem and really stands out in this musical well. Stupid with Love, I've always loved Stupid with Love. I really do like that song. This version, now, they have pushed later into the musical, blending it a little bit more with where the reprise originally came on Broadway, which again refines the pace of Act 1. These are great changes. And still, while I don't love all the lyrics of this show, I Am Filled with Calculus is absolutely genius and deserves to be applauded for the genius work that it is. And I See Stars ends the musical on a really nice high. Now, some of the more egregious songs have been cut. Stop was nice, was fun, but really slowed down the start of Act 2, and didn't really feel necessary, didn't really feel like it was pushing that story along. This has been replaced with I'm Blowing Up. Originally written for the pre-Broadway run and cut when they went to Broadway, this song feels a little bit more plot-focused. Lyrically, it's messy. While it does provide a nice moment for Katie, where we actually get to see a little bit more of the journey of her becoming, a mean girl, I don't think I was quite sold on the actual song. But it is definitely an improvement and a better moment than Stop was. Meet the Plastics, I have had a grudge against Meet the Plastics. I spoke about this in my review of the Mean Girls film, but my problem with Meet the Plastics is that I really think it undermines Regina George as a character. Regina George is the queen bee. Everyone knows who Regina George is, except Katie. Regina George is the most popular girl in school. She should not have to say her own name, because I feel like it would make a lot more sense for the musical if everyone else was singing about Regina George. Because that's what popular people do. They swan in, they own the place, they don't need to introduce themselves. And a character like Regina George should have that power and that stance where she makes an impression without having to say anything. And that's what would make it so much more impactful if, by the time it comes to World Burn, when she's been toppled, when she's down back at rock bottom, when she is now having to say, my name is Regina George at the start of World Burn. It's little things like that, little bits of polish that I feel like this musical is starting to get, but didn't really have on Broadway, which were just little things that really took me out of it. I'm sad this is still something that is maintained as it's come to the West End, especially because it feels like such an obvious thing, especially to me, that this musical could do to just refine itself and give a better storyline through its music, through its lyrics, to make it feel a little bit more purposeful and to tell the story more. I mean, that's what musical theatre is. But the most egregious song is Whose House Is This? Oh my god, how is Whose House Is This still in this show? Whose House Is This is so bad. It is one of my least favourite musical theatre songs of all time. I think it's just so repetitive and so bland as a number. And honestly, out of all the songs I wish they had retooled for this version, it's that. I can't stand that song. It's nice to come at the Mean Girls musical a little bit more positive with the score. As I said, it was one of my least favourite things about the Broadway version. But by simply changing the placement of a couple of songs, by removing some reprises that felt a little bit unnecessary, they have tightened it a lot more. My general problem with the score, though, is that lyrically, it's just not very funny. Musical comedies often struggle with having comedic lyrics. I think it's something that's really hard to do, but is extremely important to have. I think the strength of the comedy, and even the strength of the lyrics in general, is a little bit inconsistent through the show. Like, you have genius moments like I'm Filled with Calculus, and then you also have a song that just repeats the words, Whose House Is This? Over and over again. I think the closest it gets to really working comedically for me is the start of Sexy. Like, that intro bit is genuinely hilarious, but I feel like it often struggles to thread the comedy through the lyrics as strong as I feel like it could. Because with a film like Mean Girls that has so many iconic moments, it feels a shame that the actual lyrics of this show don't live up to that comedic genius of the original film. I'm so glad I can say that they've made really good strides with the music of Mean Girls. I'm still not completely sold, but I am more positive in it as a whole. Then there's the staging of it all. First up, again, I feel like this stretched dome of screens works a little bit nicer on a slightly smaller stage. The Savoy is kind of the perfect size for a set like this because it relies a lot on these screens and this projection to bring you to location. When it was on a Broadway stage, it felt very empty with this, whereas here it feels like it kind of can just about get away with it. I will say, this set works better when they add things to it. The best this set looks is when we're in the mall, when we have all the different shots, but they also do have the escalator that comes out. They have the benches. When they build onto this set, it can look really good, but for the most part, it does still feel a little bit empty. The general locations look nice on the back wall as well, like the mall, the school, outside in the bus car park. These locations are very striking and I like the colours. The things I didn't really like are a lot of the images that they use throughout the show. I don't know why, but these felt a little bit uncanny valley for me, so much so that I felt like they looked a bit like they were AI generated. Like there was a sort of off perfection to them that made them feel wrong. The thing is though, with projection, there's so much you can do, and I feel like a lot of the time they go with the simplest idea. We're in 2 different houses, so let's have 2 different wallpapers on the screens. Let's show a mall, let's show a colour on the backdrop for the African plains. But you've got free reign to do whatever you want, and I would have liked them to push the projection a little bit further. As I said before, Apex Predator is a great number that blends the ideas of Katie's time in Africa with her time now. The animal kingdom versus the kingdom of high school. And they do some really fun things with choreography here, making some really animalistic movements. It would have been nice if slowly we see this mall backdrop slowly become more and more jungle-like. We see some vines come down. Maybe the names of the shops start to change, allowing for the blend that's happening on stage to also be happening through the set design. But what these screens do help to provide is a really slick performance, bringing us from location to location very quickly, and definitely having a lot more variety than it would initially seem it does. I think there's ways that they could push it even further, but for the most part it does work, even if it is a little bit simple. The direction and the staging are pretty nice. I don't really feel like it has much spectacle as much as some other film to stage adaptations have in the past, but it does work. And there's some nice touches to Casey Nicolau's choreography, like the animalistic movement, and I quite liked the way that the school kind of rallies around Janice in I'd Rather Be Me. So as you can see, I am generally more positive than I thought I would be about the Mean Girls musical. I think it's okay. I think it does work for the most part, and I would recommend it if you are wanting just a nice experience. But I feel like there's so many little things for me that just could make it perfect that it feels like it's still reaching for. It's polished itself so much, and I do want to give it credit for that. Legitimately, it is a much stronger musical now than it was on Broadway, but it still feels more like a 3-star show than a 5-star show. Saying that, I feel like this is really bolstered up by some fantastic casting. This cast understand the assignment perfectly. Now, I saw 3 covers when I saw the show, meaning I won't be able to speak about all of the original cast members, but it's quite nice because I don't often get to speak about cover performances on this channel, so, you know, I'm going to seize the opportunity where I can. Charlie Byrne is a lovely Cady. Cady, even as a protagonist, is quite an overlooked role because she is more of your everyman. People tend to gravitate more towards the bigger personalities like a Damien, like a Janice, like a Regina George. But there is a real heart to Charlie's Cady. I love the way she portrays the naivety. Her vocals are fantastic. You really do believe the slow burn change into a more Regina George type figure. She's very well suited to this role and a great protagonist. Elena Skye as Janice has this lovely edge to her. I really enjoy the changes that this production's made to make her more loud and proud with her sexuality, rather than the film kind of dancing around the subject. And the change to the backstory work really well and ground Janice a lot more as a character. Her energy is so perfectly captured through Skye's anger and angst in songs like I'd Rather Be Me, one of the highlight performances of the night for me. Daniel Bravo as Aaron is a character who gets a lot less to do, let's be perfectly honest. As far as male leads go, I don't think Aaron is very high up on that list. But what I really do like about Daniel Bravo's performance is that he feels really grounded. He feels very real. He feels very genuine. Especially in a show that is filled with such big personalities, it is quite nice to have someone who feels a little bit more down to earth, which does match the initial Katie that we see. I do wish he got a little bit more to do because he is such a lovely presence in this show. Grace Mowat as Karen, fantastic. I love her so much. She's so funny in this role. An absolute treat. She milks the opening of Sexy for everything that she's got. And you can tell how much fun she's having playing this ditzy type of character. Now let's talk about some of our covers. Cleanna Flynn plays Regina George. She is the standby and she was on for the performance I saw. And she's such a bitch. Oh, she is dwelling in the bitchhood of it all. I love her blasé nature, the little glances she gives showing her true intentions. Her performance of Worldburn is very impressive, really giving a lot of weight to that moment in the show. Georgia Aaron is a really lovely Gretchen Wieners, always feeling on the back foot of it all. She manages to really sell a human experience through this rather over-the-top character. A person who just really wants to be seen and appreciated and often feels like she's being pushed to one side. And Freddie Clements as Damien, oh my god, what an absolute treat. Damien gets all the best material in this show, let's be perfectly honest with ourselves. Clements as Cover Damien is camp, flashy, fun. He takes the over-the-top nature of this show and kicks it up to 11. An absolute treat to watch on stage. And there's some lovely supporting performances from Aiko Mitchell as Mr. Duval, Zoe Rainey, who goes between all of the adult female characters with a lot of ease, making each one feel really unique. And Luca Chadwick Patel as Kevin, who really sells this angle of this nerdier student who thinks they're the coolest person of all time. I got practically what I expected out of Mean Girls. But that is not to say that they haven't made good strides with this material. They've clearly refined it and made the pacing work a lot stronger. To a point where I can say, yeah, maybe I'm not completely sold with the Mean Girls musical, but I did have a good time. I stand by what I say with that Mean Girls could have a stronger musical adaptation. But I would be lying if I said that I didn't think that this was a good adaptation for general fans of Mean Girls. If you like the film, I do think you're going to find enjoyment out of the musical. And at the end of the day, isn't that what it's for? But what do you think? What are your thoughts on the Mean Girls musical? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on the screen right now and a link to my Instagram if you want to drop me a follow over there. I also have links to other socials and a merch store in the description down below. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!